You are lowered into a tub that smells like milk and smoke. The liquid is warm enough to trick your skin into believing you are safe, warm enough to make your eyelids heavy, warm enough to make you stop asking questions. A hand cups the back of your neck like something gentle, almost fatherly, and then the fingers slide to the sides of your throat and press. Your pulse hammers against the grip. The room blurs. Somewhere close, someone whispers that this will be quick, that this will be holy, that your voice is too beautiful to be wasted on an ordinary life. When you wake, your body understands the truth before your mind can. The pain is not a sharp scream. It is a deep, burning certainty that something has been taken that cannot be returned. The air tastes metallic. A cloth is forced between your teeth. You try to cry out, but the sound that escapes is thin, strange, unfinished. The men in the room do not look at your face for long. They look at your future. They look at your throat. The world that created this ritual liked to pretend it didn't exist. It spoke in hymns and incense and marble, in the soft authority of Latin syllables drifting up into domes painted with heaven. It called music a ladder for the soul. It called boys pure when they could sing high enough to make grown men weep. And yet, hidden behind sacristy doors and rented rooms, behind the respectable mask of sacred art, there was a surgery that Rome both used and denied, demanded and disowned. Before we go deeper, tell me where you're watching from. It honestly stuns me that a buried story like this can travel across oceans and land in our hands today. By the late 1500s and into the 1600s, the Church's relationship with the human voice had become a contradiction you could hear. Women were barred from singing in certain sacred contexts, and choirs that served the most powerful altars in Europe wanted a sound that floated above the ordinary. A voice that could carry like a candle flame in a draughtless chapel. The solution was neither miracle nor mystery. It was anatomy. It was a boy's body interrupted before it could become a man's body. Officially, the Church did not order it. Publicly, the city claimed it was illegal. And yet the choirs filled, the salaries were paid, the applause thundered behind gloved hands, and the angel voices arrived on schedule, as if delivered by God instead of by a blade. In the archives of that era, you rarely find someone writing, plainly, "We castrated him for music." What you find is what makes the story darker, the euphemisms, the sideways confessions, the missing lines where shame should be, the careful phrases that suggest everyone knew and everyone agreed not to say it out loud. The paradox isn't only that it happened. The paradox is that it happened in the city that claimed to speak for heaven, and it happened so often that it became a career path. He begins, like most tragedies begin, as a child who is valuable for something he cannot control. A voice breaks out of him one day, bright and effortless, startling neighbors in a stairwell or stopping a priest mid-prayer. It is the kind of sound that makes adults exchange looks, not admiration alone, calculation. Because a beautiful boy's voice is not just beauty in a hungry world. It is a commodity. It is a ticket. It is a gamble. And gambles become dangerous when the stakes are a child's body. His name, in this telling, could be any of the thousands who vanished into records and rumor. Let's call him Luca, because the city is full of saints' names, and because his mother likes the way it sounds when she says it gently at night. Luca is not born into marble. He is born into damp stone and cramped rooms, where bread is stretched thin and winter feels personal. His father is not a villain. He is worse sometimes. He is desperate. He knows what it is to work until his hands split and still come home with nothing that changes tomorrow. And he knows what it is to hear his son sing and feel for one breathtaking moment that tomorrow might finally be different. At first, the attention is flattering. A local music master offers lessons for cheap, then for free. A priest praises the boy's tone after Mass and invites him to sing again. Luca learns to stand still, to let the air fill him, to shape vowels like polished stone. He learns the strange power of sound, how it can make adults soften, how it can make them generous, how it can make them listen. There are days when he feels like he's discovered a hidden door in the world, and he can open it just by singing. But talent is a magnet, and magnets pull all kinds of metal. Soon, the questions begin, the ones Luca doesn't understand at first. How old is he? Has his voice changed yet? Is he growing quickly? Does he wake with hair on his chin? Does he feel different? His mother answers sharply, offended by the intimacy of such questions. His father answers carefully, like a man negotiating a price without admitting he is negotiating. And there is always, underneath it, the unspoken clock. Because every gifted boy has an enemy living inside his own body, puberty. The inevitable thickening of the vocal cords, the deepening that turns angel into man and turns money into nothing. For most families, a child's adolescence is a threshold. For Luca's family, it becomes a deadline. The offer arrives not like a threat, but like salvation dressed in respectable clothes. A patron connected to a church choir suggests that Luca could be placed, trained, fed well, housed. There could be scholarships, positions, perhaps even Rome, perhaps even the Pope's choir, the kind of place where music is not entertainment but power. The patron speaks softly about providence. He speaks about sacrifice with a holy glow in his eyes. He does not at first speak about the knife. When he finally does, it is never described directly. It is hinted at like a medical necessity, like a corrective measure, like an unfortunate accident that sometimes happens to boys. The language is slippery. It leaves room for a father to pretend he did not choose this. It leaves room for a mother to imagine that God would never allow something monstrous to be wrapped in sacred purpose. And it leaves room for Luca, who is 11 or 12, to hear only the parts that sound like a better life. Warm food, clean sheets, a future where his voice matters. This is how the church did it, and how Rome did it, and how entire communities did it without having to stare the truth in the face. They didn't drag every boy screaming into the street. They built a story around the surgery that made it feel like opportunity. They put it in the hands of families who could be convinced that pain now would mean glory later. They made the child complicit through hope. And Luca, because he is a child, because he wants to be loved, because he wants to make his parents proud, begins to cooperate with the shape of his own undoing. The man who performs the operation is not always a physician in the modern sense. In that world, the boundaries between barber and surgeon are porous, blurred by necessity and tradition. A razor can shave a beard. It can also cut flesh. A steady hand earns trust in a city full of illness and injury. The operator might have a small room with clean cloth and a basin. He might have a bench, a set of tools that are kept sharp, a way of speaking that calms frightened families. He might even be recommended, which is another way of saying he is known. The day itself is often staged to look less like violence. Luca is told to bathe. Sometimes the bath is warm water, sometimes milk. Sometimes herbs are added. The smell meant to suggest healing rather than harm. The adults around him act with an eerie gentleness, as if kindness can erase what is about to happen. His mother cannot watch. She stands in the next room, praying like prayer can bargain with anatomy. His father does watch, because someone must sign with his eyes what he is unwilling to sign with words. Luca sits, shivering, while men speak over him like he is an object that must be handled carefully. There is no true anesthesia the way we would understand it. There are tricks, pressure on arteries to induce unconsciousness, opiates if available, wine, restraints, speed. These are not comforts, they are strategies. The goal is not mercy, the goal is completion. The moment before Luca loses consciousness is the moment his mind tries to invent an escape. He focuses on the ceiling. He tries to remember the sound of his own voice in the chapel, how it rose and lingered like light. He thinks, absurdly, of applause. He thinks of his father's proud face. Then the hands tighten at his neck. His ears roar. The room collapses inward. When he returns to himself, time is broken. He is not sure how long he has been gone. His lower body feels like it has been turned into fire. A bandage is wrapped tight. The air is thick with sweat and blood and something sour. He tries to move and someone pushes him back down. He tries to speak and his voice cracks into a small animal sound. A man tells him gently that he must be brave, that saints suffered more, that this pain is proof he is chosen. Chosen. It's a word that can comfort and destroy at the same time. Recovery is not just physical. It is the beginning of a life that will unfold differently in every detail, a life that will diverge from his peers in ways that cannot be hidden forever. At first, Luca is simply weak. He sweats, he trembles. He sleeps and wakes, always with pain waiting. But slowly, the wound closes. Slowly he can stand, then walk, then sing again. And when he sings again, the adult's relief is almost obscene. They listen for the same purity, the same effortless height. When it is still there, unchanged, their faces soften into gratitude. Some even cry. Luca sees the tears and believes for a heartbeat that perhaps it was worth it, that perhaps the suffering has meaning, because it is one thing to endure pain you can name. It is another to endure pain that might be pointless. So Luca is trained, harder than before, because the surgery is not the end, it is the entrance exam. His voice is now preserved, but it must be sharpened, controlled, made into something that can fill cathedrals and courts. He practices until his ribs ache. He repeats phrases until the vowels lose meaning and become pure sound. He is taught to breathe like an athlete, to hold long lines without breaking. The teachers praise him with a kind of hunger, like he is a violin being tuned. Here is the first cruelty that often gets missed. The castrato was not simply a victim. He was also a worker, an asset, a product that required constant maintenance, and that meant discipline, pressure, perfection. As Luca grows, his body begins to follow a different map. Without testosterone shaping him the way it shapes other boys, he doesn't develop like them. His limbs lengthen. His shoulders may remain narrow, while his chest expands in a way that helps him sustain enormous breath. His face keeps a softness longer. Sometimes there is a strange mismatch, a powerful torso and lungs built for immense singing, paired with features that never fully harden into adult masculinity. In a choir robe, he can still look like a boy even when he is 20. People stare, not always with disgust, often with fascination, sometimes with desire that makes the air feel unsafe. Luca learns quickly that his body invites opinions. He learns that his voice can draw admiration that is almost religious and mockery that is almost animal. On the street, some people cross themselves as if his sound is proof of God. Others whisper insults like he is proof of sin. Children point. Women look away. Men laugh too loudly. Inside the church, though, he is protected by usefulness. The choir needs him. The patrons love him. The higher the altar, the more his voice becomes a kind of power. In Rome, in particular, voices were political in ways that are hard to imagine now. A choir could be a symbol of a pope's taste, a city's prestige, a patron's sophistication. A castrato was a living ornament of spiritual authority, and Luca begins to understand the bargain that has been made on his behalf. He is fed, housed, trained. He is not starving. He has clothing that fits. He has a bed that is his alone. In a poor family, these things would feel like miracles. But the cost is threaded through every day. He cannot disappear into anonymity. He cannot decide, later, that he wants a different life. His body has been edited into a single purpose. The church, of course, would speak of him in different terms. It would call him disciplined, devoted, dedicated. It would point to the beauty he creates and insist that beauty proves righteousness. It would frame his suffering as sacrifice, even though he never truly chose it. The most disturbing part is how normal it becomes. In the conservatories and schools that train voices, rumors circulate like weather. Which boys will stay high? Which families are willing? Which surgeons are reliable? People speak of it with the same hushed practicality they might use for arranging apprenticeships. There are even cover stories for the record. A fall from a horse, a bite from an animal, an infection that required intervention. Anything except the truth. And Luca, in the middle of it, develops the survival skill that many victims develop. He learns not to ask questions that have no safe answers. He tells himself that what matters is the sound. He tells himself that he is lucky. He tells himself that he is doing something sacred. When those stories work, he feels steady. When they fail, usually at night, he stares at the ceiling and thinks about what his life would have looked like if no one had noticed his voice. Then there is the second cruelty, the one that arrives with adulthood like a slow tide, desire. Because the surgery does not remove his capacity to want. It does not remove loneliness. It does not remove the aching human wish to be chosen by someone not for his utility, not for his sound, but for himself. In cities where castrati became famous, they were celebrated and isolated at the same time. They could be adored in public and mocked in private. They could be invited into noble houses, praised by cardinals, applauded in theaters, and still be treated as something not entirely human. Some built lives of wealth and influence. Some died poor and bitter. Some became teachers, guiding other boys toward the same fate. Some tried to outrun their own history by pouring everything into art. Luca's story folds into this larger pattern. He is sent to sing where the acoustics are so perfect that a single note seems to hang in the air like incense. He stands under ceilings painted with angels while his own voice imitates them. Listeners tilt their faces upward, not at him, but at the sound he releases, as if the music is proof of a world beyond flesh. They praise God for the beauty while never acknowledging the blood that purchased it. At one performance, a visiting dignitary asks, smiling, if Luca is happy. It is a polite question, the kind of question powerful people ask to feel kind without risking discomfort. Luca answers the way he has been trained to answer. He says he is honored. He says he is grateful. He says the glory of God fills his heart. The dignitary nods, satisfied, as if gratitude is the same thing as consent. In quieter moments, Luca begins to notice the administrative machinery around him. The way money moves, the way his schedule is arranged, the way his body is treated like a thing owned by the institution. He cannot take certain trips without permission. He cannot marry in the ordinary way. He cannot form an ordinary household without people gossiping, judging, questioning. His future narrows to a corridor. Sing, serve, age, fade. And aging is its own fear, because an angel voice is valued for its suspension in time. It is valued because it refuses to deepen, but it can still weaken. Illness can still steal breath. Injury can still ruin technique. Even without puberty, time will eventually close its hand around the throat. So Luca sings harder. He perfects his craft like someone trying to outrun mortality. He becomes, for a while, undeniable. He can hold a note so long that the audience forgets to breathe. He can ornament a melody with such precision that people swear they have heard heaven. And yet, the more he succeeds, the more the original violence disappears behind the beauty. People talk about his gift, not his wound. They talk about miracles, not methods. This is the third cruelty. The art becomes a veil, and the veil becomes an excuse. Somewhere in Rome, a child hears Luca sing and feels a thrill. The child's father feels it too, but differently. The father does not hear only beauty. He hears a possible escape from poverty. He hears a future where his son might eat well, might be educated, might be paid. The father begins to ask questions about training, about conservatories, about keeping the voice pure. Luca sees the father's face in the crowd. He recognizes the look because he has seen it before. He has lived inside it. And in that moment, Luca understands a horror deeper than his own pain. He is not only the product, he is also the advertisement. He returns to his quarters unable to sleep, applause still echoing like a bruise. He thinks of the bath, the pressure on his neck, the heat afterward. The church called it glory. People called him angelic, as if angels are made by surgeons. He tries to pray, but the words feel borrowed. As years pass, new singers arrive. Younger voices shine with the brightness he once had. Praise thins, invitations slow. Luca becomes replaceable. The institution that profited from his sacrifice will not sacrifice for him. Perhaps a small pension, a modest teaching role. Glory, he learns, is a spotlight. It always moves on. His body carries costs no one names. Pain, illness, a life altered without consent. In the mirror, he sees triumph and loss together. Later, he is asked to train boys. It is called an honor. He understands what it is instead, the power to continue the cycle. He sees hopeful parents, fragile voices, and a man who watches too closely. Memory rises, a hand on his throat. Pain, applause drowning a child's fear. He could stay silent. Instead, he chooses a whisper to a mother. He speaks of costs never written down, of beauty bought with something that cannot be returned. Years later, the practice fades without apology. Records remain. So does the sound. A voice born from a wound, echoing through a world that tried to forget how it was made.